Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Don Elkins. Welcome to our debate for the Secretary of State's race. Tonight, we're going to talk about the issues in this particular election, and I'm going to start off by reading the rules that will govern tonight's debate. If you would follow along with me, I'll try to get these done quickly. First of all, the candidate, and it is one candidate tonight. We'll get to that in just a second by way of explanation. The candidate will be given the opportunity to make an opening 3-minute statement. The candidate will also be given 2 minutes to respond to each question I pose. I am the moderator. I have sat down and I have put together a list of questions for tonight's debate, and questions will be used at my discretion. The candidate is also allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to make a closing statement in tonight's forum. Each time the candidate speaks, you may notice on the table we have a set of lights. A green light will show the beginning of the candidate's time to respond. A yellow light will show that 30 seconds remain during that time period, and of course the red light will indicate that the candidate's time has expired. And again, our audience will refrain, if they possibly could, from applause or other signs of approval or disapproval. Summary again very quickly here: a 3-minute opening statement by our candidate, a question and answer period with 2-minute response times, and a closing 3-minute statement by the candidate, at which point again, I will close the program after that final 3-minute statement. So by way of introduction, again, this is, I won't say it's fairly unusual. It does happen once in a while. We have a candidates debate tonight, and only one of those candidates has decided to appear. I'll have to introduce both of them rather quickly. Charlie Daniels, who is not here tonight, who declined for his own reasons, serves as Arkansas's 32nd Secretary of State. He was elected November 2002, and currently serves in his first term. Prior to assuming office as Secretary of State, Daniels served as Arkansas's elected state land commissioner for some 18 years. The candidate who has decided to attend tonight's forum is Jim Lagrone. And Mr. Lagrone, you correct me if I get any of your biographical details incorrect, but you served as the president of the Arkansas Baptist State Convention. Mm-hmm. That's the state's affiliate for the Southern Baptist Convention. Correct. Again, that is the state's largest church group. ABSC oversees nearly 1,500 Southern Baptist churches with a total membership of more than 500,000 people. Mm-hmm. And you also apparently attended school at the same place that our current governor, Mike Huckabee, attended, Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth, Texas. Mm-hmm. And biographical information I've got on you also says that both you and the governor have a background as radio broadcasters. We do. Thank you for attending tonight, and we'll just start right off by giving you a 3-minute period to make an opening statement. Please go ahead.
Oh, it's great to be here. It's great to be back in this part of the state again. I've made several trips to Northwest Arkansas. It is the garden spot of this state for a host of reasons, and I'm sure we'll probably get into some of those just a little bit later. People ask me all the time, why did I get in the Secretary of State's race? And why would you get on a down-the-ballot race that very few people even know what they do, and it doesn't hold a lot of excitement? It really started 2 years ago in 2004 during the presidential election in Arkansas. In case you don't remember, or a lot of times the viewers don't remember, that there was a lawsuit filed against the ballot in Arkansas, but it was filed very late. And as a result of that ballot being filed late, the military vote in Arkansas was severely challenged and disenfranchised, in our opinion. So we now have stats from the National Defense Committee that 51% of the military vote in Arkansas, now this is Arkansas men and women serving overseas, in Iraq and Afghanistan and around the country and being prepared to go, 51% of their vote did not get counted. It was cast, but it was not counted. And it got my attention. What really got my attention during that time was my son had been deployed on his way to Iraq as well. He was still in the States, being trained, getting ready to go for that deployment. He was even the election officer for his unit, and yet his vote did not get counted. So when more than half of Arkansas people's vote don't get counted, that doesn't sound like America to me. So it gets me interested in the election. So since that time, we've been studying Arkansas elections, and it's quite interesting. The state has a fascinating history, and that's what I want to do. I want to change, because every vote should count. Every legally cast vote should count, and that's what our race is all about.
There's your opening statement. We'll go on now to the first question, and this, of course, is going to refer back to something that you just said in your opening statement about the military ballot. That has become something that's grabbed quite a few headlines. I'm going to read a quote here from one of the newspapers. I believe this is the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, and this was, I believe, perhaps a week ago. Correct me if you know the source of this. A Republican Secretary of State candidate, Jim Lagrone, today called the Democratic incumbent Charlie Daniels AWOL on ensuring that overseas military personnel are able to vote in Arkansas elections. In a press release, Lagrone said Daniels only turned his attention to the issue this week, which is, quote-unquote, too little, too late. Lagrone cited statistics showing Arkansas with the worst voting record in the United States for overseas military, as you just said, with a disenfranchisement rate, of almost 51%. It's tough to even say. The first question in this, and I think it's a topic we need to cover at some length, what about the military vote? If you say that Secretary of State Daniels has just turned his attention to it, what is it that needs to be done to solve the problem? And this will be a two-part. Why do you think the problem happened?
Well, the problem happened because Mr. Daniels was AWOL. He didn't care. Now, that's the bottom line. Now, he sent a few emails overseas, and he tried to act like, and he issued a lot of press statements, which he's done this year concerning our election fiasco that we had in May. But in actuality, he did nothing. Other states did a lot of things. They sent multiple ballots overseas, things like that. The reason we use the phrase AWOL, it's a good military term. But our Secretary of State was faced with a dilemma. He was faced with a decision, and he made the decision that he would just wait it out and see what happened. He also was making a speech in Fayetteville this past January where he stated he was quite pleased with the results. It's a direct quote, pleased with the results of the military vote. I'm not pleased with that. When one citizen of this state is denied the right to vote, it's not good. But when 51% of people that have put their lives on the line are denied that right, that's extremely poor performance and needs to be dealt with. He made no decisions to take care of the problem. Faced with the same situation other states were, he did nothing. He just waited to see what was going to happen. And then he continued a pattern that we've seen this year where he blamed the federal government for the problem. He blamed the lawsuit for the problem. He blamed the Arkansas Supreme Court for the problem. He's blamed the Arkansas legislature for election problems. He blames everybody else. He said the buck stops with him. I say the buck starts with him.
A follow-up on that question as well, just to clarify, the Secretary of State had said that he was, in this particular case with the ballots, the holdup apparently by the state Supreme Court was whether or not to put Ralph Nader's name on the ballot. State Supreme Court issued an order prohibiting the printing of the ballots through a certain period of time through September into the beginning of October. He said, and again I can't speak for him because he's not here, but at least in printed reports, that he was unable to take care of the problem because of that state Supreme Court prohibition. Also, as to the figures, the 51 or 52% disenfranchisement figures, he has come out and said, well, there were problems in reporting that from the counties. I guess the Cleburne County clerk said, well, we had reported, or the state commission had reported, and really it's a federal commission, had reported that there were 500 ballots sent out and many fewer returned, whereas the county said it only sent out perhaps 50 of these ballots, and then another 40-something were returned. Is there any way you can talk about that particular response?
Sure, I can talk about that response. It's a continuation of what it is. Well, it's not just the government's fault. Well, they filled out the forms wrong. So how are we ever going to find out the truth? So we have stats that say 51%. In the same article that you're referring to, his representative said there was over 90% of the military vote came back, but then they also said the forms weren't filled out correctly. Please, give me a break. That's not good information for the people of Arkansas. That's not. Now, as far as the Supreme Court is concerned, once again, that was not his statement back then. And I would believe in the sincerity of that lawsuit if it was filed much sooner. But that lawsuit was filed late in the game, and it put extreme pressure on the government agency that are supposed to get these ballots out. It put pressure on them to get these things done on time. The timing of that lawsuit was critical on this, and the lawsuit was filed in several states around the country. I will go back to that. Other states had the identical situation. So what does Pennsylvania do? Pennsylvania mails out ballots with Ralph Nader's name on it, and they mail out ballots without his name on it. They were trying to do every step possible for their military vote to get counted. That was just to those military people, according to the reports that we have. So if Mr. Daniels had made an effort, tried anything at all, stood up and on the state capitol, I would have held a press conference to show you something I've done differently, and I would have tried to tell the people of Arkansas, listen, these guys are playing politics with the right to vote. And this is what's going to happen. Our men and women are not going to get their vote counted unless these guys get this decision done. But he didn't do any of those kind of things. You have to take it to the people and let the people know what's going on. Because I don't think the average citizen in Arkansas realized the result of that. There was a lot of articles, but most people didn't realize the implication of that decision and that delay.
Let me go back again to the problem itself.
Sure.
If you are elected, what specific steps could you take to prevent something like this? And I guess there's no way you can prevent a state Supreme Court order, but in your case, you've just said that he could have done something regardless, and it was a different explanation.
Right.
How do you see preventing that problem with the military absentee ballot from happening ever again?
Well, there's two steps we've been talking about for a long time, and he has actually been quoted saying that I have a good idea. Isn't that amazing? The first step is we need to find a good, secure system to do electronic voting. We'll work on that. If you can use your ATM card in Baghdad and eat at Burger King in the airport, we should be able to come up with a way that we can have a secure system for these men and women, these brave soldiers, our heroes. We should have a way that they can have a secure ballot done. That's one option we'll look at, and we'll look at immediately. The second option that we need to look at is change these timelines. If these timelines are the problems, then we ought to change them. Now, it's fascinating to me, the state legislature of Arkansas changed the timeline on the franchise fees. They decided they need to move them up a month. They got that done while the Secretary of State was in office. So they took care of raising our taxes, as quick as possible. But we can change this timeline. And we have proposed at least 2 weeks that we'll change where you can challenge the ballot. 2 weeks on the calendar, because I understand the difficulties of getting ballots around the world, things like that. Okay, so if that's the problem, let's move it. Let's change it so that we can take care of their vote. We want their vote to get counted regardless who they vote for. You see, that's the issue. Their vote must be counted.
Let me continue on. You
Sure.
made some mention of the situation with the voting machines, and perhaps
We can talk about that a long time.
yeah,
today.
I know we could. Perhaps we need to sit there and we need to talk a little bit about what happened, at least in terms of public knowledge about this. There was a federal law, and the federal law mandated there be certain methods put in place to help disabled voters
Correct.
cast their ballots.
Now, you said that correctly, and most reporters are not just saying that correctly. You said that
Now,
correctly.
let me continue. Okay, you're jumping
don't
in.
mess it up. You're correct. Okay.
Regardless, ES&S Software is a company that helped implement the solution to this particular law, a company based out of Nebraska. The public mostly, I think, became aware of the situation when there were major slowdowns in reporting the results of the ballots during the state's primary election. There has been a commission put together to look at that problem. There have been many statements that have come from both the Secretary of State, people involved with the software company, so on and so forth. Let me start off with, I guess, a really general question. How would you have handled a problem like the one that we have seen with ES&S Software and the electronic balloting system?
Well, I'd like to answer your question, but I want to back up to let people know how we got there, okay? The fiasco in Florida in the year 2000 obviously was a mess, and people of America wanted something to happen. So they ended up, and Congress came up with the Help America Voter Act, the HAVA Act, implemented January 1st, 2002. So we were supposed to be compliant with that act by January 1st of 2004. Our Secretary of State said, no, we're not ready. We need a 2-year extension. So we got a 2-year extension. He still waited 3.5 years before he even took action on that. Now, the people of Arkansas need to understand, he set up his own commission to pick a company. His own commission gave higher ratings to a different company. He overruled them. We don't know why he overruled them. I read various press statements from the day he did it, and they change all the time. But he overruled them. By the way, they're the same people that give campaign donations, people associated with them, to him. He overruled them and picked ES&S. I've read the ES&S contract. It's about 10 inches thick. You want to talk about technical language. It's quite tough. And so, anyway, so I'm familiar with their contract, and I'm familiar about where they got started. Now, February the 22nd and 23rd, all over Arkansas, we were supposed to have working voting machines in every district. We did not. To me, in my mind, they were out of compliance with that contract at that time. But you said it correctly, and I want to go back. I want to brag on you if I can do that on the air. Can I do that?
I think you're allowed, yeah.
That's good. You said it correctly because all over Arkansas, they're getting it wrong. They're getting it wrong. The federal government did not require us to buy those machines. The federal government, the HAVA Act, really is trying to say that if you cast your vote legally, it's supposed to count legally. One vote, your vote should count. They did not say we had to buy those machines. We had to take care of handicapped voters, but they did not tell us to buy those machines. It's an important point that I hope we get to come back to.
Let's stay on that point.
Okay.
If we don't use electronic voting machines to help handicapped voters, what's your solution? Do you prefer an electronic voting system, or do you prefer paper ballots and a paper trail? Again, I go back to the same thing.
Yeah,
How would you have handled this? Do we get rid of the electronic machines?
Well, one, I would have had more people bid on the project. He allowed only 2 people to bid on it. And we have 3 counties in South Arkansas, in Columbia County and Union County and Washita County, are using machines that are HAVA compliant already. And they're much simpler and much easier. And you know what? They're cheaper and they're easier to maintain. It's an amazing thing. And we have some counties already that have history with virtually no problems. Why not use those machines? HAVA told us to take care of handicapped voters. We needed to take care of handicapped voters. And so there had to be a machine to be able to handle that. So I can assume that decision needed to be made. Personally, I like a system, and I need to explain why I like it. I like a system that gives us a paper trail with an electronic scan. So you're still marking a ballot. It's easier for people to use. It's simpler for them to use. But the easiest thing about it is that you have a recount availability that's far more simple than what you have with the touch screens that we have. You have a paper ballot. You mark that paper ballot. The system scans it. If you need to do a recount, you take that paper ballot out and you count it. And you have somebody sitting down, and it's legal. It's even legal, according to HAVA, just to vote all paper without electronic scan and have people sit down and do that, except for our handicapped voters that we need to take care of. We can still use paper. Now, the difference is with these electronic machines, the recount in Pulaski County, they use a paper roll that's about this long. Now, Pulaski County, to quote them, they call it the toilet paper roll. That's their word, okay? But you have to roll that out because on a touchscreen machine, I don't know if you're familiar with it, if you voted for candidate A, you hit that button. Well, you change your mind, and you vote for candidate B. You hit that button. Well, you change your mind again. Well, you vote for 3. You can change your mind all day long. But that paper trail is going to be recording that. And so it's going to be printing that. And here we are, we're getting this print. So they had to unroll from one precinct now, according to them, they had to unroll these rolls 5,000 feet of paper. And these people had to go over this paper this wide and try to find where they voted, and then they changed it, and then they voted, then they changed it. Well, this is the final tally.
Let's continue with this.
Sure,
just in general, the entire nation has been engaged in a debate, in a discussion about, I guess, about the integrity of electronic voting in general. There's been a lot of debate in states like Ohio from the last presidential election. A lot of people have some fears and have concerns about electronic voting. The Secretary of State, I believe, has publicly expressed his faith in the integrity of electronic voting. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a wider approach and probably more philosophical, but I'm asking you, do you, as a voter, do you trust the electronic voting systems that you're seeing now? Would you prefer paper versus electronic? I mean, if you're going to be Secretary of State, reassure me. Do I have anything to worry about from electronic voting?
Yes, you do.
Go ahead.
Yes, you do. You have a lot to worry about with electronic voting. Now, you can mention Ohio, and that's usually the Democratic Party mentions Ohio, and then I can mention Indiana, and then the other party mentions that. And we can talk about states all day long. But let's talk about just the system itself. I like a paper trail. I think the people deserve it, and I think simplicity is the word that we need. When you walk into that booth, you need to have great confidence that your vote is going to be counted, no matter who you vote for, and that your vote is going to be secret. Electronic machines are prone to those people who program them, and they're prone to those people who tabulate them, and you're depending not on the integrity of the machine as much as you're depending on the integrity of the person. But now, let me illustrate. May 23rd, we had a fiasco of election. We all know that in Arkansas, except for my opponent, because on 24th he said it was great. Well, it was a mess. And but 2 weeks ago now, 2.5 weeks ago, our first test of the system, okay, the first test happened in Crittenden County in West Memphis. They had only 9 precincts involved. They were voting on a tax issue. 2 of the machines would not even turn on. The other machines were not programmed correctly. 6 of the machines, they could not get the votes out of them. They had to take them to the courthouse, bring in an outside technician, just to record the votes. Now, that happened, 2 months after the fiasco. Here we are, and if you're Secretary of State, I would have been all over that, trying to make sure that first time out went well and went smoothly, but the first time out didn't go smoothly. We're depending on people that are not familiar with computers on the local level, and many groups are intimidated by them. I saw a county clerk. I popped in to have a visit with them, and they were busy on early voting, and so I was just looking for them, and then I looked in their early voting situation. Was not campaigning, had no name tag on or nothing, had no brochures on me. I was just going to have an appointment with them. Well, they couldn't get their machines on. There's a 23-page guideline, by the way, to turn the machine on. And there was 3 gentlemen, all of advanced years, and they were looking at the back of the machine, and she was flipping through that, just trying to turn the machine on. This is not necessary.
Let's continue. This is perhaps tangential to the discussion we're having. This is a quote from your campaign web blog that I saw. This is a quote. Back in 2002, ES&S contributed to their lobby firm between $700 and $1,000 to the Charlie Daniels for Secretary of State campaign. If they gave that amount through the lobbyists, there's no telling how much money Mr. Crawford has been able to move into the Daniels campaign through executives of the company and other individuals. I'll continue here. Sure. Just as it is inappropriate for Attorney General Mike Beebe to take contributions from the utility firms he is supposed to be regulating, it is also inappropriate for the Secretary of State to take contributions from one, the firm that is over budgeting renovating the Capitol Dome, we haven't even got into that, and two, the firm that is behind in delivering our new voting machines. Mm-hmm. So tell us, I guess, along these lines, it's hard to say, tell us what exactly you're saying. Are you alleging some sort of actual impropriety here? Do you think there's been an ethics rule violated in this particular situation? And it's kind of spelled out there, but why don't you drive it home? What exactly?
Well, I can drive it home. I do want to go back to the report and all of that on those machines later if we have time. I'd really like to talk about that. Yes, I can drive that home. I don't do business that way. I'm not going to take money from a lobbyist and from somebody who then turns around and lobbies me for a $15 million deal, plus the over $4 million deal on the voter registration. I'm not going to take money that way. The architect's wife for the dome project that you mentioned is married to the architect that designed it. Okay? Now, that gives us the appearance of impropriety. And I think that the people of America and the people of Arkansas are weary of backroom deals or things that look that way. Now, you mentioned earlier that I've been a pastor all my life. I've been living in the glass house, in the bubble all my life. Had to deal with construction contracts, had to do that all the time. Everything needs to be out in public. The best government is the one where the people know what's going on. And when you're bidding on a project and you find out whether the architect's wife works for the Secretary of State, how much opportunity are you going to have to win that bid? You see, you have that situation. Did the other company that they allowed to bid for these machines, did they have lobbyists in here contributing to the campaign and contributing to his effort there? And so it's a continual pattern that we've seen in the course of his public life. I don't do business that way. I don't think it's proper. I really don't. I don't think that's good judgment, because you have to live your life. Now, in my religious background, I had to live my life knowing that people were watching me. So I had to live my life with that in mind. I had to live above board with everything that I could do. And so you just tell people the truth. They make the right decisions. And so I can't be bought in that way.
Let me continue with the idea of fundraising. How has your fundraising gone? For instance, why don't you tell us how much you managed to raise during the last quarter in which you had to file?
Oh, our last month that we had, you're at the quarter, I don't know if I could quote. I know the last month we went over $30,000, so it was the best month that we've had. I'm relatively unknown in many parts of Arkansas, and this is my first statewide race, and so we think we're doing exceptionally well. So it was a good month for us, and I wish I could call that number up. I just can't off the top of my head. I just know this month. I deal month to month.
Can you tell us who some of the corporate campaign contributors are to your campaign?
I can. Most of my campaign is coming from the little guys. I get the $50 and the $25 and the $100 contributions. So just my very close friends down in the Bryan and Benton area are the ones that are giving me the more $2,000 deal, like Charles Mazander and people like that. And the Republican Party committees, things like that from this area of the state, are the major contributors. But I get money from the little guys. I don't get money from the big boys. I don't get money from very many lobbyists. I've gotten some from Governor Huckabee's PAC, things like that. But most lobbyists are not giving me. I'm not in office. Even though no matter what I tell them, I don't have a track record. I'm not going to accept certain funds from certain lobbyists, things like that.
How would you, you're going back, you've criticized Charlie Daniels for taking money from ES&S. You've mentioned Attorney General Mike Beebe.
You shouldn't take money from people you do business with.
That's where my question's going. When you accept campaign contributions, I mean, how do you lay out the line where you say, you know what, there's a chance I could be taking business or handling state business with you as a company in the future. Mm-hmm. I have to turn down your campaign contribution because of that. Have you turned back any campaign contributions? And again, do you have any, when I say corporate, I'm not talking smaller business, maybe somebody with more than 10,000 employees, that kind of a thing, Walmart.
I have nothing like that.
None of those on your?
No.
So how do you draw the line?
Well, that situation has not arisen yet, so we hadn't had to do that. Now, if ES&S wanted to send me a check, that's the only way I can illustrate what you're doing. Of course, we wouldn't receive that, and ES&S is not going to line up But Diebold or any other company is not going to do that right now. They don't have the contract. So I have not crossed that situation yet. I would draw the line because we just can't do that. I think I will tell people, and I will be honest with them and tell them up front, this is why we can't accept your money. This situation might occur. But you're asking me about something that has not happened, so I cannot comment on that.
It's an ethical question.
Sure, you're my ethics.
You have been a man of the cloth, so I'm just curious. Is that something you might even?
Well, in the past, in my churches, we do a building project. We're raising millions of dollars. We wouldn't allow church members in certain times to even bid on the project, just because we wanted to avoid the appearance of impropriety that way. I echo back, the best government is open government, and I think it's about time people knew how decisions were made.
Let me read you a quick quote from your opponent.
Sure.
This is also from one of the local newspapers. Again, this may be the Morning News.
And let's go back to that study before
we can.
Okay,
Let's handle a couple of these first, though.
Sure.
Mr. Daniels says, this is a quote, "I think that the people trust Charlie Daniels. I've been around for a number of years."
That's what he said.
This is a quote, again. Right. "I think people trust Charlie Daniels. I've been around for a number of years. I've been on the ballot for a number of years, and the people have shown that they trust me to do the job at hand," end quote. Now, again, that's one man speaking up his own campaign.
Right.
You've not held publicly elected office before, have you?
Not statewide.
Not statewide.
Right. I did hold a public elected office. I was on public school in Bryant, and so in one of the largest districts in the state.
So along with that same question, what qualifications do you feel you bring to this particular job?
That's a two-part answer. Let's respond to his statement to start with. Many times he didn't have opposition. Okay. So it's easy to say the people of Arkansas support you if you don't have opposition on that. But, you know, the guy that took his place as land commissioner, Mark Wilcox, you can look at his website, and Mark Wilcox challenged immediately when he walked into office, there was $40,000 worth of office equipment missing. He asked Mr. Daniels, the former land commissioner, where it was, and he said, well, I don't know, $40,000 was missing. Mr. Daniels left 51,000 parcels of land that needed to be dealt with by the land commissioner. 51,000. According to Mark Wilcox, a member of his own party. The new guy that came in. Mr. Wilcox is now taking care of almost 44,000 of those according to his website. So to say the statement, the people trust me to do the job at hand, I don't think is an accurate statement. The people entrusted him to take care of the elections, and that did not happen. So I would debate that statement about that trust factor. He was also mentioning in that same broadcast that even Republicans trust him on that. So he was trying to create, he was responding to a poll that came out on that. Now, the second part of the question, why I'm qualified to do this. A pastor by nature, and I don't run from being a pastor. You know, it's not a sin, and it's not illegal. It's good, honest work. A pastor by nature, a good pastor, has two qualifications for public service. One, he's been in it already. He loves people. You see, when people deal with state government, I have dealt with state government with those guys on the bottom rung. I have dealt with those people when they sit in the hospital and they have no insurance. I've dealt with the legal system and dealing with the state and their families on the bottom rung, where those decisions from the legislature, where the water hits the wheel. I've dealt with people on that. I've held their hands on that. And I've visited the prisons, both those folks in the prison and those outside the prison. I have been there. I understand the people of Arkansas. That's the first thing. And my work, even on a public school board, I'm a public servant. I'll tell you another thing that qualifies me that goes along with that is that money does not make my life perfect. I need to continue that thought.
We can continue along that same line. The next question I have for you is, you obviously are a man of faith. You've had a very high position in your church.
Yes.
How exactly do you think that your faith will play a role in the way you govern if you're elected?
Well, to finish my thought there, money does not motivate me. It's where I've got to make all I can, and can all I get and sit on my can. That's not my goal in life. Honestly, I get an absolute thrill out of public service. If I can make somebody's life better every day, that's where I get satisfaction. Where my faith will impact public life, it's who I am. It's what I believe in. Yes, I believe in a higher power. I have no problem with that concept. I believe in God. That's going to affect my life. It affects the decisions that I make. And because I believe in God, I try to live a moral life. I try to make decisions for the betterment of all those around me. And it will impact me in that way. I also had an episode on the Bryant School Board where I had to make a very difficult choice, where a religious group was challenging a book in our local library, and I had to be the one to help write the policy to protect that book and to maintain. And so I had a practical application to where my faith came in conflict with the freedom that we have as Americans. And so we have to protect the American, the freedoms that we have, the First Amendment and all of that. It's an interesting line that has to be drawn. But all of those situations should be dealt with individually. And on that individual situation, we had decided, and we wrote a paper, and we helped the public school develop a policy so that they could handle those kind of challenges in the future and protect that library.
Following on that as well,
Sure.
Your philosophy of government, do you believe that an elected representative of the people or someone holding a statewide office, should those people govern by what they believe personally, what's in their heart, their own morals and values, or do you think that there's a line where those people really ought to govern according to the wishes of their constituency? Do you see that line? And if so, do you have a particular way of approaching that bit of what can be a paradox at times? Sure.
It's a very difficult situation, and it's a great question. So let's draw it on the line of the Secretary of State's office. How my faith impacts the elections. It would offend me deeply if you did not get your vote counted, and it was not handled in the right way, in an honest way, in a manner of integrity. And to turn your back on problems in the state, as this Secretary of State has done, in essence, is lying to the people of Arkansas. Trying to say that the elections are run well and that everything is fine is false. That's deceptive, and he's inaccurate in that statement. My personal integrity requires me to go out and make sure that everybody's vote gets counted in that situation. But your question, the paradox that you described, has to be dealt with. I'm pro-life. If I'm faced with a pro-life decision, I'm going to choose pro-life because that's who I am. I believe in that culture, and I believe that I'm worried about a Pandora's box of possibility and euthanasia and all those other issues that science really is giving in front of us, and ethics and all of those things. So in those situations, you get down to your core beliefs. And you see, I will debate you in the fact that anybody says that they can't decide with that way. Everybody decides based on that bottom line core beliefs when they're faced with a challenge. That bottom line of who you are. If you cannot stand up for who you are, that means you're going to stick your finger in the wind, and wherever a pole is blowing is where you're going to make your decisions. And leadership is not that way. Sometimes leadership's a very lonely thing, and you have to make tough decisions. And I'm well equipped to make tough decisions, even if it seems like everybody's against you. Now, you work hard not to let that happen, but that's where your character comes into place. And sometimes you have to make that tough call, and that's what leaders do, and I do that, and I've done that, and I will continue to do that.
No, it had to have been a tough decision. You originally got into the campaign season as a candidate for the lieutenant governor's office, and you decided to switch campaigns. We know you're not the only one in this race on both sides that decided to do that. Could you explain to us what motivated that decision to step into the Secretary of State's race?
Well, I want to tell you, it was a gut-wrenching decision. It was a very difficult time. But, you know, as the political landscape, it's hard to go back in that. Over the last 2 months leading up to that decision, it was quite obvious that 72 people were going to run for lieutenant governor. And rumors in the political world are vicious. And I'm telling you, we didn't know what was going to happen. But my love for elections and my love for this process and integrity in this process, which started in 2004, just continued to come forward. And then the advisors that I had, and I just began to hear from so many different groups. And this is going to sound egotistical, okay? Now, I'm a humble guy. I'm very proud of my humility, okay? And so these people came to me, and from 3 different distinct groups that said, Jim, your message and who you are and what you need to do fits the election process in this state, and you would have a better time to get your message to the people out in Arkansas going through that process. And so I left the lieutenant governor's race. Now, that was in May and June of last year, so it was a long time ago. I switched on that. And by the way, I had to refund money because I'd raised money for that race. And I had to go back and send money back. And I didn't enjoy doing that, by the way, because we needed them for the race. I sent a letter out offering that to all my people that had supported me, and I thought that was enough. But they came back, and I called the Ethics Commission. They said, no, the proper thing to do is this. So we had to refund the money. So I have an example of what you were talking about. So I made that, but it's the message that I wanted to take to the people of Arkansas. It's where I best fit at this time in my life in the 06 president and the 06 election year. This race is where I need to be. And so I've been on this race for over a year and taking my message about election reform out.
Let me ask you about your relationship with the other members of your party on the ticket. There's a lieutenant governor candidate out there. He's the state senator from the city of Springdale.
I've heard of it. He lives close to here, doesn't he?
He's a darling of the local media. Well, okay, maybe not. I'm talking about Jim Holt.
Of course.
Well, let me ask you, can you characterize your relationship with Mr. Holt, and do you share many of his ideas on some of the issues that we're seeing in the campaign, i.e. in terms of immigration, in terms of any number of things. Well, how would you describe it?
Well, I would, with the immigration issue, let's deal with the immigration issue as confined to the Secretary of State's office, okay? Secretary of State should make sure only legal residents get to vote. And our system right now does not provide that. I can assure you with great confidence that I really believe that unless we take better steps on voter registration, that we will see and have seen illegal residents of this state voting. That needs to change. So in that area of immigration, that affects the Secretary of State's office, and that needs to be dealt with. And it needs to be dealt with on a basic paper level, because we've got to tighten how we register people to vote and residency requirements, things like that. You know, you can walk in the office and claim an address, and unless anybody challenges this or looks it up, you probably can vote at minimum a certain type of ballot, provincial ballot, I think, and be able to handle that. So on that immigration issue that Jim is so famous for, that's where it affects my race. Jim is a man of faith, and we share a common faith. And so I only have 3 children and don't anticipate any more. My wife is a cancer survivor, and she's physically unable, so our child rearing is done as far as you can ever be done, because the kids ask for a lot more money than they used to.
Another question for you. Sure. Doug Thompson with the Stevens Media and the Morning News of Northwest Arkansas recently wrote, quote, Lagrone, a Republican, told supporters at the 8:45 a.m. stop in Fayetteville, referring to a train tour you took.
It was great, man. We had a lot of fun.
He said that the Democratic Party has targeted Secretary of State races. Yes. Secretaries of State administer elections. Here's a quote. They want to control elections and have in Arkansas for 130 years. He said. Lagrone's running against Charlie Daniels, the Democratic incumbent. Are you alleging voting wrongdoing by your opponents or by the other party when you say something like that? And if so, can you be specific? It sounds like an allegation.
That is a great question, and we need a long time to answer it, but I will. I was quoting there. He's quoting many of the things there that I had said from that Whistle Stop tour, because the 2 days before that, USA Today ran a front page article, and that's what USA Today had stated, that the Democratic Party all over America was targeting Secretary of State's races because they wanted to make sure there were Democrats in control of the election. I'm of the opinion, and it should surprise the people of Arkansas, I think the Secretary of State's office, as I think the county clerk's office, ought to be nonpartisan. Anybody that touches the election ought not to have a party affiliation, because the people, once again, back to integrity, they need to believe everything is being handled properly. So I ask you, and I challenge those that are viewing tonight, what would you think about a nursing home in northeast Arkansas that I can quote that cast 400 ballots in the May primary, 400 absentee ballots, and yet it's on a 110-bed nursing home? It sounds like difficulties to me, especially when those 400 ballots came from one party. We were visiting Carroll County yesterday, and they allege in a lawsuit about how their voting system was disenfranchised through the absentee ballot system. 3 Democrats filed a lawsuit in St. Francis and Phillips County alleging voter impropriety there, because they were alleging that people were disenfranchising voters, and it goes again to the ballots of one particular party. We can go down to Little River County in southwest Arkansas in the May, and in the runoffs where early voting started in one particular person's part of the district but did not start in the other part of the district. I can talk election stories and alleged fraud when you have 1,300 names by one newspaper account that were eventually handled, but those 1,300 names voted without signatures. In Pulaski County, we had 30 people that had voted without signatures. We can continue to go on and on and on. Criminal charges filed down in Jefferson County on the May 23rd election. I can talk about election problems all the time. My opponent calls them, and I need to tell a story, but I see that the light is on. Can I illustrate with a story? And go overtime.
We can. Well, actually, we'll just continue. You can add that on to the next question as well. But again, I guess I'll ask you to clarify whether or not you've mentioned a series of different events.
Right.
Are you saying that you see a pattern and that you believe that you're making the allegation that it's a form of organized voting fraud orchestrated by your opponent's party?
No, I'm not making that statement about the whole party. Let me illustrate the situation through a lady that I met in Dardanelle. She did not know that I was running as a Republican. It was really quite fun. I crashed a meeting down there, Big Fish Fry, so we're having a good time. She said, "Oh, Secretary of State, you do the elections." I said, "Yes." She said, "You need to stop my brother from voting." And I said, "What, you don't like your brother? What is it?" You know, I'm always trying to make a joke, you know. She said, "Well, he's voted for the last 5 times." And I said, "Well, that's no problem. He has the right to vote just like you do." She said, "No, he's been dead." And he's been dead for 5 years, yet he's voted in these elections. And I said, well, how's he voting? Well, somebody's signing his name. Therefore, my opponent says that there are problems all over the state, and those problems need to be dealt with. Somebody deliberately signing a name and casting a ballot is committing fraud. That's not a mistake. That is fraud. It was fraud when a guy voted 23 times, which is alleged, in the May 23rd. That is fraud, and those situations need to be dealt with. We cannot get, many times, some county clerks and not county clerks, but county prosecutors, and the good old boy system is alive and well in Arkansas. Kid you not. The way the election commissioners are set up and all those things, the good old boy system is well and good. Now, in Carroll County, I just heard this story yesterday, so I'm still researching details, but they had to pay, now this is incredible, they had to pay by one party, the Democrats in Carroll County said you had to pay $7,500 fining fee, that's what I was told, to run for county prosecutor. That's more than I had to pay to run for a statewide elected office. Why? It begs the question, why? But one party has been in charge of the elections forever. And so the situations in Arkansas need to be dealt with. They need to deal with them as well. We all need to deal. I think it's dishonor and disservice to the Democratic Party to let this, because I know many fine, wonderful Democrats that want fair elections as well. And so we need to join together to clean up this process in this state. But you got to have a Secretary of State that wants to.
We'll continue on that theme. In June, you made these proposals, and again, these are from newspaper accounts. I'll read them quickly. Number one, the state should move the date for primary runoffs from 3 weeks after the primary to 4 weeks after the primary.
At least out a week, yes.
He said early voting started too soon after the runoff, and an additional week would give election workers more of a cushion. Two, Lagrone said the state should pay for the maintenance of the newly acquired voting machines and provide better training and pay for poll workers. Three, you also want to require proof of residency to authenticate new voter registrations, to clean up the state's voter registration rolls, and to staff the Secretary of State's office with the quote-unquote sharpest people in the state, and more than likely recruit a county clerk to direct the state's elections. Another one, you say you favor strengthening the State Ethics Commission, and you would provide details on that later at this time. And I guess we'll start with those 3 or 4. And the question that I heard not only through myself but echoed to the media was, how much will it cost, and how are you going to pay for it? Do you have an answer to those yet?
Well, no, I don't have an answer. I've been asking every county, and most of the counties don't know. The great scandal of this contract is an unfunded mandate put upon us by the Secretary of State's office. Every county, including Washington County, including Benton County, every county in Arkansas is going to have to pay for the maintenance of this equipment. And so they smiled and said, hey, you got some brand new voting equipment, but now you're going to have to pay for it. I have the numbers from Pulaski County. It's going to cost $53,000 just to say hello. Every year, so immediately, starting January 1st, $53,000 out of Pulaski County budgets, bang, they're going to have to come up with it just to pay for the maintenance on their equipment. I had 2 counties in southeast Arkansas tell me it was going to quadruple their election costs. In Rising, their cost of this new equipment and maintenance was going to be about $2,500, which doesn't seem like a great sum. Well, they can't pay it. Their workers hadn't had raises in almost 6 years. They cannot afford $2,500. So county after county cannot afford that. So what are they going to do? They're going to go to their people to raise taxes, or they're going to let it slide. Therefore, that means this equipment that's not working that well right now is suddenly not going to be maintained, and now we're going to have unbelievable problems. But that's in the fine print of that contract. And you would be amazed how many county clerks and how many county judges I have met that did not know that, were not aware of that, and suddenly now they're beginning to wake up to that situation. And so we don't know because we have not been informed. I can make a guess. You can start in every county by multiplying $80 times the number of specific machines that they have, and that will give you a ballpark figure, and then you can begin to go from there. But I think the state ought to be paying for that. I don't think it's proper to handle it. Now the light is on again, but I need to continue on that same vein.
Well, again, this will actually have to be our last question, and I'll try to make it a double.
Okay.
Again, it sounds like you've got proposals, but you still don't, and this is the thing that reporters complain about.
Sure.
But there's no specifics on how you pay for it. So if you would continue that, the second...
Well, the Secretary of State would tell me.
The last one would be here that the Survey USA poll, most of the polls still show you trailing the incumbent.
Sure.
The Survey USA poll today, but KHTV in Little Rock, showed you trailing 57% to 33%.
Right.
How do you pull those numbers up? And let's wrap it up with the how you pay for the proposals.
Oh, man, you gave me so much. How I pay for those proposals, if one of the Secretary of State would be honest with the people of Arkansas and tell them what they did to them, I think those numbers would come out. And let's do full disclosure. The Secretary of State said that they're going to go back and ask for $2 million from the legislature next spring. $2 million. They've had $25 million from HAVA. They had all this money from the federal government, and now they say, oops, we messed up. We need a little bit more money. $2 million is not a little bit more money. So they need to come forward and tell the state of Arkansas. I don't think it's my job to tell them how much it's going to cost. I'm trying to find that information out, but when the county clerks can't tell me, how am I going to be able to know? Because the Secretary of State's not going to do that. That poll is quite interesting. We have other polls that show the race a lot tighter. Those polls are not going to be published. We have great confidence going into this race. That poll also shows, and even that poll that you're citing from KTHV was the same poll that also had a horrendous mistake that they gave to a candidate which really affected a race in May. And so we're going to work on that by name recognition. We're going to work on that and getting our message out. And I can assure you this race is going to tighten up. And so we're going to continue to plow forward, and we have great confidence what's going to happen. We've got a great crew working. And, you know, one poll even shows me struggling with name recognition with some Republicans, which means Republicans are thinking about it before their vote gets cast. But the poll also reveals that when I come to the area and they meet me, they're going to vote for me. So we're working very hard, and that poll is going to change, I promise you.
Well, that's the end of our question and answer session. You now have
Sure.
you now have time. I'll make sure I give you the right time. You're going to have a 3-minute closing statement. Please go ahead.
Well, I'll use my 3 minutes to go back to a question that I hope we got to, that report that was done on these machines. That report that was done shows you how the Secretary of State here works. He formed a commission of his own choosing. He researched only only ES&S. He allowed no questions on the way the counties handled election. He allowed no question on the Secretary of State's office. So the people of Arkansas did not get a full disclosure on what went wrong on May the 23rd. Their questionnaire was designed, and I'll give you a copy of it. It was designed solely to focus on the problems with the ES&S. So he wanted the picture of Arkansas, and he spun the media so effectively that the media only said, well, ES&S messed up. No, that was not the complete picture, but that's the way that he spun it by this bogus report that he gave out. I can illustrate. I can give you a copy of it. His committee asked for 30 documents to be provided before they gave recommendations. They received only 9. They made recommendations based on less than 30%, only 9 out of the 30 documents that they asked. They did not allow us access to the conversations that they had. They sent their crew up to Benton County but did not go to Phillips County where so many problems were. And that shows you the difference between my opponent and me. I believe in full disclosure. I'm going to tell the people of Arkansas the truth. He gave them a partial picture. And so if they want to have faith in their election, they want to clean this process up, I'm going to do it. And I need their vote. I need their help. They go to our website. The ABCs of election reform that you referred to gives the whole picture. I'm the only candidate saying that we need to strengthen the Ethics Commission because right now the Ethics Commission has no power. They'll give a $500 fine. The most they can do is a $1,000 fine. My own opponent's got an ethics charge against him. Is he going to affect his election? He could get convicted of that, if you will, to use that terminology. He could pay a $1,000 fine, and that's not going to make any difference with people because the Ethics Commission does not have teeth to enforce the rules. The only way that we're going to get a government here accountable to the people is to strengthen a watchdog group that would be nonpartisan and be able to take care of it. They don't have any teeth. That's why I want to strengthen that Ethics Commission. I don't mind them watching me if I get elected, you see. When you're honest and you have nothing to hide, you don't have a problem with that. I need their vote. I need their help. I'm going to clean up the election process in this state. We're going to make sure that every vote gets counted. I do need folks to know I've been married to my wife for 30 years. And we have 3 children. My one that served his country so admirably is about to graduate. My daughter married a computer guy who's going to take over the world, as all computer guys are. My youngest son's a drummer in the drum line here at the Hog Wild Band. He made his drumming debut this past Saturday night, which was the high point of the evening for me, before the game started when they made the A on the field. Then other things happened, of course.
Jim Lagrone, Republican candidate for the Secretary of State's office. Thank you very much for your time this evening. And again, both candidates in this, the Republican, Jim Lagrone, has been with us tonight. The Democrat, of course, is incumbent Charlie Daniels. Again, we would urge you to get out there, get registered, check with your county clerk's office, and go cast your ballot, exercise your franchise on November 7th. I'm Don Elkins. Again, thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you again soon.